My name is Daniel. My son's name is Eli. His mother, Sarah, died in March. Cancer, fast and cruel. One day she was laughing at breakfast. 4 months later, she was gone. Eli stopped talking after the funeral. He would sit in his room and stare at the wall. He stopped eating with me. He stopped laughing. He was 15 years old, and already he looked like an old man carrying something too heavy. I thought the mountains would help. Sarah loved the mountains. She used to say the trees there were older than our sadness. I thought maybe if we went somewhere she loved, we could feel close to her again, heal something, start breathing again. So I packed the tent, the food, the sleeping bags. I told Eli we were going. He didn't argue. He just nodded and got in the truck. The drive up was quiet. 2 hours of winding roads and pine trees and radio static. Eli kept his head against the window and watched the world blur past. I kept trying to find something to say. I couldn't find anything. We set up camp near a creek. The water was cold and silver, and the mountains stood around us like walls. It was beautiful in a way that made my chest hurt, because Sarah should have been there to see it. The first night was fine. We ate hot food. We sat by the fire. Eli even smiled once, small and quick, when a spark jumped and landed on my boot. I held on to that smile like it was the most important thing in the world. I fell asleep thinking maybe this was working. I had no idea what was already watching us from between the trees. The second night changed everything. I woke up at around 2 in the morning. I don't know why. There was no sound, just a feeling. The kind that crawls up your back and tells your body something is wrong before your brain understands it. Eli was sitting straight up in his sleeping bag. "Dad." His voice was barely a whisper. "Dad, someone is calling my name." I listened. At first I heard nothing. Just wind, just trees moving, just the creek somewhere in the dark. Then I heard it. Eli, soft, gentle, coming from just outside the tent. My heart stopped. I unzipped the tent slowly and looked out. Between 2 pine trees, maybe 30 feet away, stood a figure. It was tall, thin. It stood completely still, like it had been planted there. My eyes adjusted to the dark, and I could see it was a woman. Long hair, a pale dress. My throat closed. "Dad!" Eli's hand grabbed my arm from behind. His grip was ice cold. "Dad, that's Mom!" I could not speak, because the shape was right, the hair was right. The way she stood with one hand slightly lifted, the way Sarah always stood when she was waiting for you to come to her. But Sarah was buried 300 miles away. "It's cold," the figure said, "and God help me." It was her voice. Exactly her voice, the softness of it. The way she pressed the word cold like it was something fragile. "I want to come inside." I could feel Eli moving behind me. He was about to call out to her. I grabbed his arm and pulled him back. "That is not your mother," I said. My voice was shaking so badly I barely recognized it. "I miss you both." The voice drifted through the trees like smoke. "I've been so alone. Please, let me in." Something about those words made my skin crawl in a way I still cannot explain. It wasn't what she said. It was how she said it. Too smooth, too perfect. Like something had listened to recordings of Sarah and learned to copy her, but didn't quite understand why humans say the things they say. Sarah would never ask to be let in. I zipped the tent shut. I held Eli against my chest while he cried. We did not sleep again that night. I lay there listening to the creek and the wind, and once, around 4 in the morning, the soft sound of footsteps walking slowly around the outside of the tent. They stopped right behind my head, and then they were gone. In the morning, the figure was gone. No footprints, no marks in the dirt, no sign that anything had stood between those trees except a strange smell, like something burned and wet at the same time. I wanted to pack up and leave immediately, but Eli said he was fine. He said I had imagined it. He said maybe it was just a hiker, some woman walking at night. He looked at me like I was the one acting strange. That scared me more than the voice had. We stayed one more night because I couldn't think straight. I told myself it was nothing. I told myself, grief does things to you. That night I woke up and Eli's sleeping bag was empty. I found him standing at the tree line, just standing there in the dark, in his bare feet, staring into the woods. He wasn't sleepwalking. His eyes were open, but when I touched his shoulder, he flinched like I had burned him. "She was talking to me," he said. "Eli, there is no one there." He looked at me for a long moment. Then he looked back at the trees. "You can't hear her," he said quietly, "but I can." We drove home the next morning. The whole ride, Eli sat pressed against his door with his face turned away from me. He didn't speak. He didn't eat the chips I bought him at the gas station. He just watched the mountains disappear behind us in the mirror. His eyes were calm in a way that was not peaceful. They were calm like something had been turned off inside them. Things got worse at home, much worse. Eli started talking to empty rooms. I would walk past the kitchen and hear him in there, speaking in a low voice, pausing like he was listening to a response. When I came in, he would stop and look at me like I had interrupted something private. "Who are you talking to?" I asked him once. "Mom," he said, simple, flat, like it was obvious. "Eli, your mother is... she's in the backyard, Dad." He looked past me toward the window. "She stands near the old oak tree. She comes every night now." I looked out the window. The backyard was empty, just grass and the big oak tree Sarah used to hang the bird feeder on. I started checking the locks at night. I started sleeping with the lights on. One evening I watched Eli from the hallway. He was standing at the back window in the dark, his forehead almost touching the glass, staring outside. His breath was fogging the window slowly. And he was smiling. It was not a smile I recognized. It was too wide, too still. I called his school counselor. I called his doctor. I started looking up grief counselors. Everyone said the same thing. He is grieving. He is processing loss. Give him time. None of them had seen that smile. None of them had heard the voice in the mountains. I started researching. I stayed up late on my laptop reading things I should not have been reading. Forums, old stories from people in the Southwest, indigenous accounts of things that wore the shape of people you loved, things that used that love like a door, things that would call to you in familiar voices until you opened something you could never close again. "Do not answer them," one post said. "Do not let them in. But most importantly, do not let them get close enough to touch someone you love. Once contact is made, they have a thread." I read that and my blood turned cold, because something had been standing 30 feet from my son in the dark for 2 nights in a row. And Eli had wanted to run to it. It was a Tuesday night. I fell asleep on the couch with the TV on, which I never do. Something deep in me, some animal part, woke me up at 3 in the morning. The back door was wide open. The cold came in like a held breath finally released. The curtain above the door was moving slowly. The porch light was off. I walked to the door and looked out. The backyard was dark. The oak tree was a black shape against a slightly less black sky. The grass was wet with dew and silver in the moonlight. And there, at the far edge of the yard where the grass meets the open field behind our house, stood my son. He was in his pajamas, bare feet in the wet grass. He was completely still. Beside him stood a figure. It was tall, taller than a person should be, and it was wearing Sarah's face. I say wearing, because that is the only word that fits. It was not Sarah. I knew it the moment I saw it, the way you know a bad dream even while you're in it. The shape was right. The hair was right. But something about the proportions was slightly wrong, like a copy made by something that had only ever seen a photograph. The neck was too long. The arms hung just a little too low, and it was standing too close to my son. It had one hand on his shoulder. "Eli!" I screamed his name so loud my throat tore. The figure's head snapped toward me. It turned the way no human neck turns. Too far. Too fast. And for just a second, in the moonlight, I saw its face fully. It was wearing Sarah's face the way you wear a mask. Underneath, around the edges, something else was looking out at me. Something old. Something that had been hungry for a very long time. Then it smiled at me with my dead wife's mouth. I ran across that yard faster than I have ever moved in my life. I grabbed Eli by the arm and pulled him back toward the house. He stumbled and turned, and when his eyes met mine, I saw something I will never stop seeing. For just a moment, his eyes were wrong, empty, flat, like something had stepped out of them and left the lights off. Then he blinked, and he was crying, and he said, Dad, what's happening?" I got us inside. I locked every door. I turned on every light in the house. When I looked out the window, the field was empty. We moved 3 weeks later. Eli is in therapy now. He doesn't remember much of what happened between the mountains and that night in the field. The doctors say trauma can do that. I let them believe that. He still sometimes stops in the middle of a conversation and looks toward the nearest window. Like he heard something. Like something far away called his name in a voice he recognizes. I always say the same thing. "Hey, look at me, stay here." And so far he does. But I leave every light on. Every single night I leave every light on. Some things use love as a lure. They listen, they learn, they wait. And the voice they steal is always the one you most want to hear.